Coming up on today's show.
The common theme that our clients have is that they feel overwhelmed by their organizing project or by increasing their productivity. And so we do like to suggest very small, simple things that they can do to make a big difference.
I like this concept, but how do we kind of implement it?
Often the momentum of just taking the first step, so first of all, identifying what that small step is so it by itself doesn't feel overwhelming, and then taking that first step can provide some momentum and mean that we actually get a project underway.
Small changes that can make a big difference in your organizing. Today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. Today we are going to make some small changes that give us big results in our organizing, and we're joined by Debbie Rosemont out of Seattle, or kind of the outside of Seattle area, Washington. How are you today, Debbie?
Well, Seattle, and I'm doing well.
That's good, I mean, it's all kind of one big happy family there anyway. So anyway, well, we're talking about small changes that make a big difference in your organization and your success. People like small little changes because then it doesn't sound so hard. So what are some of these ideas you have for us today?
Well, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because the common theme that our clients have is that they feel overwhelmed by their organizing project or by increasing their productivity. And so we do like to suggest very small, simple things that they can do to make a big difference. And the simple things, the small changes by themselves don't feel so overwhelming. So an example, if you have a room or an office that you need to clean out and organize and it feels like a big project, what if you started small by setting a period of time? So a 20-minute time frame to just get rid of whatever clutter you could in 20 minutes. Or you could set a small goal to toss 20 items. If you did that 5 days a week, that's 100 items that would go, right? Or 100 minutes of organizing. But it doesn't feel so overwhelming because it's 20 at a time. Does that make sense? Yeah,
it makes great sense. I mean, it sounds kind of like the manufacturers, I can't remember what they call it, the technique where they just do these small iterations, change, and ultimately they make big changes because they've made these little things, taken these little steps.
The other thing that does, John, is it helps implement something as a habit. So when we do something small, it doesn't feel scary, and we're more apt to do it again. So if I can organize for 20 minutes in a day and it feels okay, it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm exhausted afterwards, I'm more likely to say tomorrow, well, I'll do that again because yesterday it wasn't so bad. And then if I do it repeatedly, it becomes a habit. It just becomes part of my day. I'm organizing for 20 minutes a day on most days, and that's going to keep me organized.
Well, it's Go Month right now. It's January, and people are into organizing. I like this concept, but how do we kind of implement it? I mean, I get the idea that we have the small chunks. How do we plan that out in maybe the overall scope of putting together a plan or goals or even resolutions?
Yep. Well, you just said it, plan it out. We can have great intentions, but if we don't put some plans in place to implement, then the action doesn't happen. So if you've got a goal to get an area organized or to make a change in your time management, we need to figure out on your calendar, ideally, or in your task management system, how you're going to put that into play. So I just mentioned the tossing 20 items or the organizing for 20 minutes a day. Actually scheduling that as a routine on your calendar, for most people, we honor what's on our calendar. That can be an idea to ensure that we implement.
Now is that something you have on your calendar? Do you have and is it morning, afternoon? Do you kind of do it during downtime when you're maybe not motivated to do other stuff, or at your peak time? How do you do it?
So I have a weekly routine on my calendar to stay on top of organization and plan out my goals and activities. So for me, that does exist as an appointment on my calendar. The daily habit of 10, 15 minutes at the end of the day to kind of clear the decks, which honestly isn't a lot of time, that is a habit for me. It's just something I do at the end of the day to kind of set things up for the next day. And then another daily habit is coming into the office in the morning, and again, about 10-15 minutes, prioritizing my list. It's a small chunk of time, but it's a habit that sets me up for success for the day.
Now, I think I recall reading on your blog, don't you have like the 10-minute toss challenge or 10-minute toss Tuesday or something, kind of make an event about it?
That's right. So again, thinking about how to make something routine. So each Tuesday on the blog, we suggest a 10-minute Tuesday toss. So it's something small that you could clean out in 10 minutes or so that, again, if you did that every week, you'd have a lot of areas cleaned out. So it's one drawer, or it's a handbag or a work briefcase, or, you know, a small section of a desk. But done routinely, you're going to make a big difference, right? That's the idea.
Absolutely. And it's simplyplace.com, correct? And you come up, you make a suggestion every Tuesday, right? Kind of as a thought starter of what people need to get going. That's
right. Yes. And sometimes, you know, there's seasonal ideas, and sometimes it's, you know, sharing resources to help you make that 10-minute toss easy.
Awesome. Well, we're going to make sure we'll have that in the show notes as well, so people can reference that. Let's get back to some more small changes, because again, I think people like to do it in bite sizes. What are some other little tweaks that people can do to kind of make themselves more organized and more successful?
So one of the keys to, again, implementing successfully, in my opinion, is having an accountability partner. Somebody that's going to actually ask you or pay attention to whether you do what you say you're going to do. And so to me, that's a small thing to put into place. Checking in with somebody or asking somebody to hold you accountable to make a big difference. I know for a lot of people that accountability step, again, small thing to think about, but it can make a huge impact to their success or to their actually getting the organization or the project done.
Now, you know, we've heard this concept of accountability partners in several of our podcasts, and I'm going to ask you, how do you find the right person to do that, and how often should you be connecting with them?
Yeah, those are two great things to think about. How do you find the right person? I think you need to think about who and what type of personality are you going to need to help hold you accountable? Do you need somebody that is really going to hold your feet to the fire and kind of get on your back, so to speak, if you're not moving forward on something? Or do you need a more nurturing touch, somebody who's going to encourage and support you along the way, but who isn't going to be critical or you know, overly demanding? So think about your personality and what's going to push you to be successful. And then it should be somebody who you're interested also in supporting, because I think the best accountability goes two ways. As far as how often to connect with that person and how to do it, you know, that's something that you would discuss when you set up this partnership. Some people will touch base daily. So, you know, a 5-minute phone call in the morning about what they plan to do that day, the top 2 priorities, for example, and then how did they do on what they said they were going to do yesterday. I personally email with my accountability partner once a week. We say, you know, here's what I said I was going to do last week. Here's what I got done or didn't and why. And here's what my plans are for this week. So we touch base weekly, and we call each other out if we see something on the list for more than 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think the accountability thing is great too, and especially as if you have a partner who they're challenged. So then there's you both have money in the game, so to speak, I guess.
Right.
Great. Well, what other things can we do? We've got accountability partners. What are some other ideas that you have?
You know, again, small things that makes a big difference sometimes is just taking the first step on a project, right? So again, if we're feeling overwhelmed and don't want to do something, often the momentum of just taking the first step, so first of all, identifying what that small step is so it by itself doesn't feel overwhelming, and then taking that first step can provide some momentum and mean that we actually get a project underway. And, you know, we say often starting is the hardest thing, right?
Yeah. Give me an example of that, of maybe a client or even your own life, of something that you set out to do, a larger project, but that very first step.
Sure. Okay, so for myself, if I know that I have a goal to exercise, you know, a few times a week to get myself to the gym, a small first step might be setting my clothes out and setting the alarm the night before, so that the next morning it's easy to just get up. I don't have to think about it, and I get into my shoes, and that is, for me, literally the first step to actually making it to the gym, right?
Now would you put that step in your calendar, like lay out clothes, or is what's in your calendar is go to the gym?
Yeah, the calendar item is, the appointment with myself to go to the gym. But for me, it's setting myself up for success the night before, so I don't have to debate about whether or not I'm going to do it the next day.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, listen, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about more small changes that we can make in order to get big success in our organizing. We're with Debbie Rosemont. It's Simply Placed, and the website and blog, itssimplyplaced.com, and we'll be right back. Are you looking to get your office organized but don't know where to start? And what can you really do to keep your office organized? Smead has put together a new ebook to help you answer these exact questions. We've compiled the best tips from professional organizers around the country to help you tackle the most common office organizing challenges. Go to smead.com/office organization and get your free copy today. That's smead.com/office organization. The new organization for the office ebook from Smead, keeping you organized. We are back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about small changes, little things that we can do that have big impact in our organizing and really in the success of life. And we're with Debbie Rosemont from It's Simply Placed, her blog and website, itssimplyplaced.com. Debbie, let's get more into, people love to eat up these little small tips because really those little changes can get the ball rolling in many circumstances.
Yep. We've talked about kind of chunking something down so that you can take a small step or a first step. Setting a timer is something else that if you can commit to doing something for just a certain period of time and then decide if you want to continue or not, that can get that momentum going as well. So the Pomodoro Technique is something where you would set a timer for 25 minutes. So again, rather than thinking, oh, I have to work on something for hours, what part of it could I get done in 25 minutes? Mm-hmm. And then literally taking a break after that and deciding if you want to spend another chunk of time on it. So 25 minutes by itself doesn't feel overwhelming. And honestly, if we spent 25 minutes on something, each of 5 days of the week, that really adds up to make some big progress.
So should we, when we're looking at setting goals and, it's Go Month now, New Year's resolutions and things like that, do we start broad and kind of keep dividing it down until we get maybe into something I can get done in 25 minutes, versus, something I can get done next week, something I can get done in the next 30 days. Is that what you're suggesting too?
Yeah, you start with the end in mind. So what does the finish look like? But then how do we break that down into, for example, a 25-minute chunk that while if my goal is to run a marathon, that might feel overwhelming to me today, but to start out with a 25-minute walk/jog by itself does not, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you get a marathon done in 25 minutes, but
no.
You have to run really fast.
Right.
Okay, great. So I think this timer thing is a great, and it's pretty simple to do. All you really need is a timer, get it set, but you do need to have those tasks kind of divided out until where they're kind of on the lowest level of, okay, here's a bunch of 25-minute tasks. Do you like to have any system where you write this down in a journal or some kind of planner, or how do you get that on paper? What does it look like?
Calendar for me does work best, and it again works well for a lot of people because they're going to have that appointment just like they would honor a doctor's appointment or a client's appointment. They'll see something on their calendar and actually move forward. So when I'm planning something out, again, end in mind first, and then what are the steps I actually need to schedule into my calendar to ensure that they happen. Okay,
so now you've got the calendar is the you don't have the little 25-minute tasks, or you do have the 25-minute tasks?
I have some chunks of time to work in 25-minute bursts. So
okay.
I might call it focus time or, whatever it is. And I might actually have a couple hours a day or a few hours chunks during the week where I'm going to pick a 25-minute, block, take a 5-minute break, and then hit it again, maybe changing tasks if that's something I need to do.
Okay, great. All right. Do we have any more tips?
Yes, I do.
Of course.
Yeah. So email is something that is very overwhelming to a lot of people. So I wanted, again, to give a small tip that can make a big difference with email management. Two, actually. One is think about what you can do to minimize email coming in the first place. So, small thing like unsubscribing to email that you don't want anymore, over time can add up and make a big difference to what lands in your email inbox and what you actually have to deal with. But also, most email programs will allow you to set a simple rule or a filter where you can take emails and direct them, instead of to your inbox, to a particular folder, for example. So one small change that I made with my email was I set a rule so that any email that came in with the word unsubscribe in it, which are typically newsletters or weekly emails, those go to a particular folder that I've called Skim. And I can literally skim those emails every few days if I want to, once a week or even daily, but they're all in the same place, so the process of skimming them makes it fast, and my inbox is much less overwhelming because it has dramatically reduced the volume coming in.
Oh, that is a phenomenal tip, because I think about, you're required as a business to, when you send out a promotional email, to have unsubscribe options at the bottom of it. I mean, that's law. So the only ones you don't get that are probably just personal or one-on-one things, which are the ones you really want to focus on anyway. So you have it. How often do you go over to the Skim folder? Do you have that somewhere in your calendar, like once a day, twice a day, to go and look at those things?
Yep. Again, for some people, it's going to work to add this to a weekly routine and actually put maybe an hour on the calendar to skim a week's worth of this type of email, read what you want to, and empty the rest. I have, again, a habit of just looking at mine daily, and I do so towards the end of the day after I've gotten higher priority activities done, and I'm kind of closing out my day because I want to make sure nothing is slipped in there that shouldn't be in there. Meaning, someone said the word unsubscribe, but it's really a personal email, not a newsletter. They just happen to use that word. So I take a look at mine daily, and again, you can see, even though email is filtering in there automatically, I can see that I have, 10 unread or 20 unread, so I'll know if there's something new in there. And then at the end of the day, when I'm skimming this, I'll read what I need to and right-click and empty the folder. For me, every day works.
Wow, that's a phenomenal tip. Any other email tips that could help? Because that seems like a big area a lot of business people particularly, and really everybody is bombarded with.
Yeah, most of our clients in the business world are overwhelmed with email. This is a tip that applies to email certainly, but actually clutter in general. So Barbara Hemphill of the Productive Environment Institute, who's a pioneer in our professional organizer industry, coined the term or shared the term a long time ago that clutter is delayed decisions or postponed decisions. And that's true of email clutter as well as clutter that we might have around us in our office or in our home. So something can become clutter when we don't make a decision on it and leave it to deal with later. And those types of things tend to pile up and then become overwhelming. So again, a small tip that can make a big difference is to make a decision, right? Mm-hmm. To be decisive. So if we can do that on the email in our inbox and not hold it there to come back to later, if we can do that periodically throughout the day, we're not taking a ton of time to make the decision because it's just on the matter of emails that came in since we last processed, but we're getting things out of the email inbox and into the right place. So whether that's a reference folder, because we're going to have to refer to the email another time, our task management system, if we need to work on something, but later, because right now we're just making decisions, or whether we're, clearing the clutter and deleting what we can or forwarding to somebody else what they need, make a decision. Small step, but it makes a big impact in not getting overwhelmed with decisions to make all at once.
Some people say that they, get so much email that they get distracted by it, and then they, so some people say, well, turn off your notifications. And there's some that'll say, don't check your email, only check it every 4 hours or whatever. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, good or bad?
Yeah. So I would agree with turning off notifications. I think they do more harm or cause more distraction than they actually are rewarding and letting us know that there's something we actually need to act on. Hardly ever do you need to instantaneously respond to an email, especially if you're supposed to be focused on something else. So as far as how much time you can have go in between email processing sessions, you mentioned 4 hours, and that might work for some people, but many need to be a little more responsive or feel a little better about checking a little more often than that. So think about what is the threshold for you about how long you can have email go and how long someone can wait before they get a response.
Okay.
So for some people, once an hour. For some people, every few hours. And that's when they're going to be checking email.
Great. Well, we have time for about one more tip.
Sure.
Give us your best one on your list for making a small change to get big impact.
So for those who are running organizations, volunteering, or working in corporate America or running businesses, having an agenda for meetings. Again, it's a small thing, but just having the agenda and putting some forethought into what you want to accomplish in a meeting and then using that agenda to help you keep on track can make a huge difference. A lot of time is spent in meetings, and when we have that agenda to kind of direct the course of the meeting and then end the meeting with some accountability again. So what decisions were made, who's going to follow up on what, and by when, makes a huge impact in making the meeting more effective.
Awesome. Well, these are great tips. And for those that, if they went by too fast, we'll have those in our show notes, as well as your contact information. Let's talk about how people can get a hold of you and what kind of clients you work with.
Sure. Well, we're a small productivity and organization firm. There's 7 of us all together. So we're lucky enough to be able to serve both residential clients in our residential division and commercial clients in our commercial division. We help people one-on-one with hands-on organizing. We do individual consultations, and we also do group training. And we can be found online at www.itssimplyplace.com. The blog that you mentioned is on our resources tab, so you can go and search for those Tuesday 10-minute toss challenges that way, if that's something that interests you, or search for anything else that might be helpful, and hopefully you'll find some good tips there.
Well, that's great. Well, I'm so glad we got you here during Go Month. We're giving people great ideas to really make 2015 a great year, and I want to thank you again, and I'm sure we'll be talking again with you soon.
It's always a pleasure, John. Thank you so much.
You bet. Debbie Rosemont from itssimplyplace.com. We've made those small changes now for some big impact here in 2015 on keeping you organized. Coming up next time on Keeping You Organized.
I recommend that you have some type of household mail processing system, ideally within arm's reach of a trash can, your recycling bin, and or a shredder.